Clarkson Independence District Library. Just to let you know, another program we have coming up in, it's going to be November 1st on Saturday. We have Judy Krasnow coming in. She will be in costume as Carrie Nation, and she's going to be telling the life and story of Carrie Nation. And it kind of goes along with the 100-year anniversary of when Carrie Nation came to Holly in Michigan. So, and I don't know how many maybe went to the celebration in Holly they had a couple months ago, but she'll be doing a similar thing about characterizations. So if you're interested, there's handouts on the table here. So I'm going to turn it over to the Motor City Ghost Hunters, and they're going to talk about paranormal.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's the month of October, which it means it's time to talk about everybody's favorite October topic, ghosts, right? It's a really busy time for paranormal investigators. We don't sleep much during the month of October. If we could go ahead, we're going to take a second and introduce some of the members of the team. To start out with, my name is Kathy Srock. I am one of the lead investigators and case managers with the team. I've been with the team now for 5 years. This right here.
This
man right here, he's the important guy.
I wouldn't go that far. But my name is John McCormick. I'm the team founder, team leader. I started the team just about 8 years ago. And so this is my family, some of my family. We're about 24 strong right now. We've got members based all over southeastern Michigan, and we actually have members that go into Ontario. We have one in Hamilton, Ontario. We also have one in Niagara Falls, Ontario.
We're international.
We are an international team. But I'm going to introduce you to one of my top guys. His name is Jason. Go ahead. Jason Schrock.
He's
one of the
he's not
lead
Mike, so
investigators in Mike, though.
yeah. He's one of our lead investigators and one of our website designers, and kind of
Case
John's
manager, he's
backup
the
guy. And he's been on the team for just over 5 years as well.
I just like hearing it. So.
And we're in debate on who's better half, because we actually met as part of the team on an investigation and at your house, actually at one of the training sessions at John's house, a couple months after joining the team. So we found a lot more than just ghosts that day, which is good. We have a little 2-year-old at home, so it's fun. You want to introduce the rest of the team?
Brenda Ozog. Brenda is one of our researchers. She's also one of our case managers. Brenda's been with the team now for
2 years.
2 years, going on 3, I think. Left to go to Colorado for a little while. She came back. Very, very happy she's with us, helping us with the research. Kate? Miss
Hi.
Kate, how long you been with us here?
Going on 2 years, and with my better half, Don.
That's a dispute too. We're still trying to figure out who's better half.
Two of our good investigators.
Yeah.
Allie Healy. Allie's been with the team now for, what, about 7 months?
Yeah, 7, 8
9
months.
Yep, 9 months now.
Okay. And Allie just got back from,
Where did I get back
you
from?
want to tell us where you went?
Did I go? Oh, I thought you meant like I went on vacation.
Well, yeah, a little bit more important than vacation.
No, I joined the team right after I got home from Afghanistan. I was a combat medic in the Army. We actually have another veteran on our team. But yeah, I was in the Army for 4.5 years, came home, joined the team. They've treated me very well. And my better half is also on the team, but he's not here tonight. And he's one of our newest probationary members.
We're going to have a couple other team members kind of stopping in. They're in transit right now, so bear with them. They're coming from the east side, but they will be here in this weather. But we are very fortunate also to have a couple other folks with us tonight that were members of the team. They're still part of the MCGH family. Terry, you want to stand? Hi. Terry and Don.
Terry's the better half. We've already figured that one out.
We're right in their backyard. Terry and Don were with the team for
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years, yeah.
4 years, yeah.
It's only been a year.
She's kind of busy. She's a busy lady, and you work for the cable system where?
Oxford Community Television.
So she's got a little stuff on her hands there, so she's a little busy.
And a guy getting ready to enter the room because he likes to make an entrance.
There's another one too.
This is not the first time he's walked in late to a library presentation so he could make a grand entrance.
T3. T's sort of like our gentle giant. He's also one of our case managers and one of our better investigators. Sherry?
Hello, nice to meet you.
They kind of drove up together from where, East Point area?
Yeah, around St. Clair Shores.
That, which actually ties right in perfectly. We are all volunteers. We do this because we love this. We love to find out answers about the paranormal. We love to help our clients, whether it be a home investigation, people are experiencing things in their homes, maybe they're experiencing things in their business, or maybe they just have a really neat historical location that they want us to come in and take a look at things. But we're all volunteers. We do all of this free of charge because we love it. And we love to spread awareness. We love to educate as much as we can about the paranormal. We actually even, in fact, do a free event over the summer for kids to talk to them about how to safely investigate and to show them some of our equipment and the things that we use to investigate, as well as take them on like a little mini investigation. So we do that every summer, children ages 7 to 17, so that we can kind of continue to spread awareness about the paranormal, especially with how popular the paranormal is right now. And how much people enjoy it. And actually we have a couple more team members that are filtering in. In the back of the room is Kaz. He's one of our case managers. He's been with the team for almost a year now. And one of our newest members, Kelly, just walked in. She's one of our investigator in trainings. We've had her for a month now. We haven't scared her away yet, so we figured that's a good thing. We're going to take a quick look, like I mentioned, or actually like John mentioned, this is only a portion of our team. So if we want to take a quick look and see some more of our team members. Honey, can you play it? All right, so as mentioned, we have a very large team, and there's actually 2 members that haven't even We have to edit a new intro video because we have 2 additional members on our team. But we have had the privilege of investigating all around the state of Michigan, as well as into other parts of the country. And as John mentioned, internationally, as we have partnered up with a team in Canada, Bert's team, Beyond Ghosts. And so we even have the opportunity to do a lot of investigations over in Canada and to check out some of their cool locations. And Bert is a really great asset to our team, and we're going to see an example of him doing something that he does later, but he is actually one of the lecturers on the paranormal circuit. He does something called period resonance, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we're really lucky to have some great members of our team. And like I said, we've investigated a lot of different places, and you're going to see a lot of investigative evidence from different investigations around the state. And we've been, has anyone seen the movie Shawshank Redemption? Okay, that was filmed at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. We were lucky enough a couple years ago to do a private investigation there. Some of our team, do we have any of the avid ghost show watchers in the audience? Okay, what kind of shows do you guys like to watch?
Ghost hunters.
Ghost hunters, okay.
I go across different ones.
Yeah, you do them all, right?
I like a haunting.
Okay.
I forgot what the channel is.
Okay, good. Does anyone watch Ghost Adventures? Okay, so Ghost Adventures a couple years ago did an investigation at the Villisca Axe Murder House. Are you familiar with that? That's in Villisca, Iowa. And we actually had our members there on the 99th anniversary of those murders. And they revealed some never before seen evidence of the murders to the proprietor and his assistant of the home, and you're actually going to see a video about that in a little bit. But so we've been really lucky to be kind of all over the place and have a lot of cool different opportunities to investigate. Now, it's the teacher in me. I teach high school by day. That's kind of my real life job. And so especially since we do a lot of these presentations with some future investigators, some of the individuals that are interested in getting into the paranormal investigating, we like to talk about some of the rules that we live by in terms of paranormal investigating. We are an anti-trespassing group. I am sure that at some point over the years, you have heard of a news article or seen a story on the news where ghost hunters were trespassing in a location. Have you seen those stories? Okay, that's good. That means it hasn't been happening around here, but it does happen around the country, and we are very, very anti-trespassing. We do not go in any location that we do not have permission to be. Typically, the places that people will not grant us permission to go is because it's a safety concern. There may be asbestos, it may be a bad building structure, lead paint, you name it, it could be in there, and there's typically a reason why people won't let you into a location. And so we are always respectful of that. Every location that we go in to investigate, we have the property owner sign off and grant us permission to be there because we think it's really important to respect a person's property. We're also an anti-drug team, anti-vandalism and anti-litter. We love history. A lot of us got into this because we enjoy history, and we have several researchers on our team that are great historians. And we kind of joke that we're historians in the extreme degree. We just really take that research back to different times. And so we're really respectful of the places that we go into, and we always talk about that. We like to try to keep it even better. When we leave it, we want to keep it better than when we found it. And so we've actually also had the opportunity in the last couple of years to team up with a lot of different historical societies around the state and host investigations on their behalf at their locations so that they could raise money for their locations so that they could do preservation, remodeling, offer different events at their location. So we've actually helped them raise money.
Shameless plug.
And later in the presentation, I'll highlight a couple of those upcoming events, but we've teamed up with the Port Huron Historical Society up at the Fort Gratiot Lighthouse. We've teamed up with the Dearborn Historical Society, the Flat Rock Historical Society, the Whaley House in Flint, And I know I'm missing some other ones, and we've got a couple of new locations in the works for 2015. So,
This
shameless
Saturday.
plug number 2, if you like us on Facebook, we're going to have an announcement coming up soon in the next couple of months about some really cool 2015 public investigations that we're going to be offering to benefit different historical societies. So, shameless plug number 2, like us on Facebook. All right. So I think it's really important that in order to understand some of the evidence that we gather, that you understand the equipment that we use in order to gather it. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of that investigative equipment. I jokingly called this slide the must-haves. Now, there you could sink thousands and thousands of dollars into investigative equipment. We need to get him into a self-help group.
There goes that guy again.
There's that, well, you're the president of the self-help group, right? Because there's tons of equipment that you can purchase out there. We're really lucky that John has quite a large array of investigative equipment that he's purchased for the team, as well as that we use, that he has purchased for his business, that we're actually able to use to help us scientifically debunk. Have you ever heard that term, debunk? We're a firm believer that not everything's paranormal. Shocking, right? That's not what you expect a paranormal group to say. And so we do our best to try to figure out if there's a logical or scientific explanation for what's happening. So we're going to talk about some of that different testing equipment, but these are the things that if a new investigator was getting into the field of paranormal investigating, that really, they should have these things. The first thing would be a flashlight. We spend a lot of time sitting in the dark. So flashlights are really good, you know, you need to walk at some point and you don't want to fall in holes. We've actually had a team member years ago fall into a grave at a cemetery. So it's really important. Flashlights are good things. We're also going to show you a video in a couple of minutes where we've used the flashlight before to do a question and answer session, where if you have one of the flashlights where you twist it, you can twist it just enough that if you were to tap on it, it would light up. And perhaps if you watch Ghost Hunters, you've seen them use this type of investigative style in their investigations. Now, we're pretty particular. If we set up a flashlight and it goes crazy and just starts lighting up without us asking questions or directing it to the flashlight, we don't consider that to be evidence. We consider that to be coincidence. It's only when it's directly responding to us, and you're going to see a great video from when we did an investigation with 89X in Trenton at the historic Trenton Grand Hotel in downtown Trenton that perfectly demonstrates that it can respond on cue. The next thing is our digital voice recorder. For those of you that watch the shows, you know that kind of the bread and butter of paranormal evidence are EVPs. That's the most common type of evidence that's captured. And to me, I think that if I had to pick one piece of equipment, I would pick the digital voice recorder. Because to me, it's pretty amazing if a voice can come out of thin air and tell us something. And we're going to take a look at some different, or take a listen to, I should say, at some different EVPs later in the presentation. This guy, how many are you up to now? Voice recorders?
Got about 14.
14. Did I mention he needs a little self-help group?
This is my newest one, though. Because what does it detect? Yes, ma'am. Not much gets by this.
That's the scientific term, by the way.
Scientific team.
The last thing would be a digital camera. Thank goodness we're in the digital age now, right? You don't have to take, I was always really horrible taking pictures with a camera with film because I would take a whole roll and maybe I'd be lucky if I got 4 pictures. But the great thing about digital cameras is, number one, we can document the locations we're in. We can document the surroundings, that if something occurs and we need to check and see the surroundings, we can go back to our pictures. And also we can look for different anomalies that might show up in the pictures. And we're going to take a look at a couple of pictures later. So those are kind of the must-haves. Now, I mentioned already that we like to debunk as much as we can. And so some of the different testing equipment that we use, and John's demonstrating right now, we might use an infrared thermometer. An infrared thermometer is great because a lot of times you get claims about cold spots and hot spots in a room. And an infrared thermometer will allow us to shoot the light that little red dot that you saw just a second ago, at a location and get the temperature reading of that specific location. So we can see, is that location different than the temperature of the whole room? So that's a great piece of equipment that we use. Or were you holding? Okay, I had to see what order he was going in. Down near the bottom, we have two things that really measure the same thing. They just do it in a slightly different way. We have a MEL meter and a K2 meter. Both a MEL meter and a K2 meter measure EMF, electromagnetic fields. Okay. The thing that's really important about EMF is that it's really significant in the paranormal for two different reasons. Number one, everything has electric-magnetic energy, anything that's electric. So if you go into your house, you're exposed to EMF. Your refrigerator has EMF. Your microwave has EMF. Your cable box has EMF. Everything has EMF. Now, when we go into an investigation, we do a sweep of every location to determine what the baseline reading of that location is. And that's important for two reasons. Number one, if we go into a location and people are reporting that they are experience a feeling of being watched, they feel like they have a pressure in their chest, they have a headache, sometimes they feel short of breath, sometimes they're nauseous, and it tends to always be in a certain location of their house. There is a very high likelihood that they have high EMF in that location of their home. EMF is like low-grade radiation. Some people are more sensitive to it than other people. So Jason and I can go into an investigation together. He could be EMF sensitive. I could not be. We could be in the same room, exposed to the same elements, and he could start to have a physical reaction to the high levels of EMF. Now, as you probably know, one of the most common claims of people thinking that they have a ghost or a haunting is that they feel like they're being watched. Well, that's also one of the side effects of having an EMF sensitivity. So it's important because it allows us to potentially debunk. It's also important because as we're dealing with the paranormal, we know that that's a type of energy. And so if we go into a location and we get a baseline reading of very low or no EMF on our machines, and then suddenly we've got all this activity occurring, and our K2 meter is lighting up, our MEL meter, the numbers are changing on that. That lets us know that there is suddenly now an influx of energy in that location. And that could potentially let us know that there's possibly something paranormal there. As I mentioned, they both measure EMF. The K2 meter, which is this lovely one right here, measures it on a light scale. So the more EMF you have in a location, the more it lights up. So if you get all the way into the red, that's the highest level of EMF that it measures. The MEL meter is a little bit more accurate in the sense that it gives us a digital reading. And so you can see the number 3.3 on the screen. And so it gives us a little bit more specific, whereas the K2 meter was a range. And each range would light it to a certain color. This is more specific. The other thing that's really nice about a MEL meter is that, if you see, do you see the little number under the 3.3, the 71.5? That's the temperature of the room. So this will measure the temperature of the room as well as the EMF levels in that location. So that's nice because we can also look for temperature variations.
What's humidity?
Apparently I'm humid. You can tell by my hair. Okay, so a little curly hair joke, had to work it in. Near the top, we have a humidity gauge. Okay, we use that to test how much moisture is in the air. That is significant because if somebody's taking pictures and they're showing you, look at all these different anomalies, and if there's a high level of humidity in the air, it's potentially possible that their photographs are picking up moisture in the air. So it's important for us to take a look and see if it's a high level of humidity or not. Do you have the dust particle counter with you?
The dog ate my homework.
Oh, I've heard that excuse before.
It's in one of my trucks.
The thing on the very bottom is a dust particle counter, and that goes with the same idea as the humidity gauge. We're not going into people's houses and pulling out our white gloves to see if they dust well enough. Just so you know, we're not judgmental in that sense. But if somebody takes a picture in a really dusty room, guess what shows up in the picture? Dust. Okay? And so we like to take a look at the readings of the dust levels in the room to verify that we have low dust readings, so we know if there's any anomaly showing up that it's not dust. Okay? Do you want to make a shameless plug?
No.
No, okay. All right. Just hand them out, throw them up in the air. All right, so that is some of our testing equipment. We also use a lot of video equipment, okay? And obviously a basic video camera comes in really handy to document what we have going on in an investigation. And if you see the lights on each side of it, and actually John's holding one up with one of the lights too, those are UV, ultraviolet, and IR, infrared lights. And as we know, there's a light spectrum, right? And to our naked eye, we can only see a portion of that spectrum. So by hooking up a UV light or an IR light, that allows us to see further onto both ends of the spectrum. And so have you ever heard of something being a full spectrum camera? Have you ever heard that on the shows? That means that it has an IR light and a UV light hooked up to it. It allows you to see more of the spectrum rather than the pit that is visible to our naked eye. So that's what full spectrum means. So we use the different types of lights. We also use a DVR system. Okay, a DVR system allows us to go into smaller locations and set up multiple cameras. The last thing we want to do when we go into a small location is be tripping over each other. And as you can see, there's a lot of us when we go into an investigation. And we don't want to be tripping over each other and contaminating each other's EVPs. So if we're in two rooms next to each other and somebody's moving around and we've got voice recorders set up in the other room, we don't want to think that that's evidence or knocking or something like that. So if it's a small location, we might set up a DVR system, which allows us to have eyes in more areas of the home at one time without contaminating small spaces. So it lets us, have a person kind of sit there and keep eyes on all these different locations, look for anomalies, things of that nature, without actually tripping over each other. And then this one's a really fun toy. Okay, this is our FLIR thermal camera, and John's holding it up right now. And as you can see, if you can see on the screen or potentially on the screen in John's hand, is that it gives you a heat temperature reading. And so that lets us know if there's something present that has varying temperatures. And so you probably saw, hopefully you could see, that it showed up different colors. Now here's the really cool thing. Heat lasts for a second, so if there's something present, even if it's not alive, it will still continue to show up on the monitor. You want to do one on that side too so that they can see? So that's kind of a cool thing because we spend a lot of time in dark hallways, and so that allows us to shoot down a dark hallway and look for anything that might show up, whether that thing be something potentially paranormal or, heaven forbid, a mouse. Because I'm not afraid of ghosts, but I am so afraid of mice. I will be out of there so quickly, trust me. But so that lets us know, because if they hear scratching in the walls and we see some mice run by, guess what? It's debunked. It might be the mice. So that's a cool thing that we're able to use as part of our team. Some other equipment that we use, far from me, you have the Ovilus. The Ovilus, if you watch any of the shows, and you frequently see these kind of things on Ghost Adventures because they team up with Bill Chappelle, who makes a bunch of this equipment. And what it is it takes a reading, and obviously, of course, they don't give you the complete formula because they don't want people to mimic or make their equipment. But it takes a reading of the humidity, the EMF levels, the temperature, and it's believed that based off of certain data that it can manipulate and say different words. It's programmed with a vocabulary of over 2,400 words, and it has a screen hooked up so you can even see the words as they come up. And so that's another thing that we set up during investigations. Sometimes it gives us responses that relate. Did it tell me to? Hi, honey. But sometimes it says random things, and we can't really pay attention to it. So that's just one that we set up. We like to give the spirits and locations that we're at as many different possible ways to communicate with us as possible. And so that's just something else that we set up and that we use. And we typically try to look for it to coordinate with other bits of equipment or pieces of evidence so that we can see if it's corresponding. In John's hands, he has a motion sensor. Motion detectors are really good because we can set them up in hallways, and if something moves in front of them, they will light up. It's talking back to me. I get enough of that from my students.
Right.
So motion detectors are really nice because we can set them up in those dark hallways and see if there's any movement. And we actually had an investigation. I mentioned it once before, and we're going to see the video with the flashlight interaction. A couple years ago when we were doing the investigation at the Trenton Grand Hotel, where we, through the different bits of the Ovilus and different things that we were using to communicate, figured out that we were communicating with a young boy that had died in the area. He had actually drowned in the river. And so we actually had the motion sensors set up, and this video is on our website, MotorCityGhostHunters.com, shameless plug number 3. And you actually can hear an EVP recorded at the time where it says, and you can hear one of our investigators saying something about wanting to play tag. Do you want to play tag? And you hear, whee, and then the motion sensors light up. So it's almost as if it's like running down the hall playing tag with us. And so you can check that out on the website. But so motion sensors are really nice in that sense. On the top, we have a laser grid. And actually, Kaz has one out right now. These are really nice because, once again, dark rooms. We want to look for if we see any sort of shadow movement in an area. So clearly, if we see, if there's, so Kaz is kind of moving in front of it, you're able to see that some of the dots might disappear. That lets us know, like if in the top corner of the room, those dots go away, and we're watching our video cameras and we see those dots disappear, that means there's some sort of shadow in that area that blocked out those dots. If it was a problem with the light itself, the whole thing would go out, because all of those little dots come from one single light source. So if it was a problem with the light, they'd all go out. So if only just a certain area goes out, that lets us know that there's some sort of shadow movement that's blocking the light in that specific area of the room. I apologize for the really cheesy clip art. Is a quick thing to find. But these are trigger objects. And it's not because we like to play with dolls and balls when we go on investigations, but we set them up in different locations to see if we can kind of increase activity. And so if the claims of a home, or there's belief that maybe somebody that was young passed away in the home, we might set up a toy to see if we can increase energy and communication with that spirit. If we go into a location that's military related, we might bring in an American flag or a military hat or something to kind of increase energy in that location and try to talk with whatever's believed to be there. So that's how we use trigger objects, and hence the picture. Now, we are really lucky on our team because we have a couple of other really cool investigative tools that we're able to use as part of our investigations. And one of them is research. We are really lucky to have some awesome researchers on our team, and they're able to dig into the past and find out information about a location, whether it's confirming what the homeowners believe to be the case, or potentially debunking. Maybe they all believe a tragedy occurred and they can't find any record of that. But so they're going to dig into the history of a location and try to provide some information about that location for us. And so we're actually going to take a look at Miss Brenda telling us a little bit about research.
Research helps us in the current model because we're able to validate names, places, ages possibly of who may have lived on the property. A lot of times we pull land grants or plot maps and we see who the owners were, and from there we can gather census record information. And from the census record information, then we can pull out death records or birth records to see who was at the property. Some challenges we have is if it was rental properties, the families may not show up on the plat maps because they didn't own it. They won't show up in city directories. So we have to go by the research we gather or information we gather from the family members that live there or from or the current owners of the property. Possibly 20 to 30 hours of research will go on one residential case. It depends if you have to go to the libraries and do
I apologize, I don't know why it's,
footwork. Not everything can be done on the internet. You have to look through newspapers, you have to look through death records, you have to look through all kinds of stuff in order to validate what was going on at that house. There's always legends, urban legends, I want to say, I call them urban legends. Somebody either has committed suicide in the house, somebody's buried in the yard, different things like that. And we have to go and search through things, fires of a home.
It always
that people
gets
may have died in,
intimidated.
and try to validate that legend that they give us. If a death occurred after 1920, I usually try to contact the police department and do a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, and see if I can pull anything on that property, because those records are not available in Michigan online, for one. Two, sometimes the death certificates won't actually give you what happened when the person died. So you have to find a newspaper article or a police record to see what actually happened, what kind of traumatic event it would have been.
Do the police look at you funny?
Not anymore. They're getting used to me. I will tell them exactly why I'm there. They just give you the FOIA sheet, you fill it out. It may take a couple days to get the information. You know, it depends on if they're busy or not, or if they have the information or not. A lot of times, it's hard to get the information.
so there's a little bit regarding research. Did you notice every time it froze up, I started to move towards it and it would start again? I intimidated the computer. He believes me. All right, one of the other things, so we're lucky to have research, and we've got some awesome researchers that go to conferences about research and are have all cool different types of certification regarding it, and so we're really lucky in that sense, and we're actually going to listen to some EVPs in a couple of minutes that we were able to find out the significance of what was captured based off of information that our researchers pulled from census records. And so things that would have been a cool EVP but necessarily wouldn't have been super significant, we find out are actually really significant about the location because of the information they were able to pull. The next thing, I mentioned Bert a little bit earlier in this idea of period residence. And what period residence is Bert goes into a location with a lot of information about that specific location and the people specifically connected to that location. And he will role play and ask questions as if it's specifically to that location, those people, and he will kind of role play that part to try to increase activity. And so here is actually a video of Bert doing some of his period residence work.
Greetings, Lyden Brothers. I'm glad you all can make it out for the Rudyard Kipling meeting. For those of you who don't know, Brother Kipling was a Mason from way back, famous, of course, for his prose and stories. And he actually wrote a wonderful story about our very own lodge. Not this one, but of a Mason's lodge. If you wish to join in and read with me, by all means.
So that's an example, and obviously there's more video there, but since it's freezing up, we'll stop it anyway. But that's an example of Bert going into a location and role-playing, and so he went on to read some things related to that specific, to the lodges in general. Do you remember where that was at?
That was in Farmington.
That was in Farmington?
That was Farmington Masonic.
At the Masonic Lodge in Farmington, so hence talking about the lodge.
Yeah, it was a prayer and a poem.
Yeah, a prayer and a poem related to the Masonic lodges. The next thing that's really interesting that we're really, really lucky because we actually have two people on our team who specialize in this type of communication. This is Instrumental Transcommunication, or ITC. And we're going to actually shoot to a video from one of our members that couldn't be here tonight. But Tim W. is we had a lot of Tims on the team at one point, hence why we've got T3, and then we have Tim W, and we had another Tim at one point. But so Tim W is really actively involved in the ITC community, and he's another one of the individuals that frequently go out and speak regarding ITC. And so we're going to actually go to a video of him explaining a little bit about ITC.
Hi guys, my name is Tim Woolworth and I'm the ITC specialist for Motor City Ghost Hunters. ITC is a term that was coined in the mid-80s by Professor Ernst Senkowski. It basically involves the communication with the other side via technology. In the 80s, when this was happening, EVP was all the rage. EVP was first recorded by a man named Frederick Jurgensen, this gentleman right here, in the late 50s, where he was recording bird songs, and he got home and listened to it, and there were anomalous voices. Friedrich Jurgensen met with a man named Konstantin Raudive, this man right here, and he published this book, Breakthrough, in 1971, and it took the world by storm. And from this book, EVP was launched as a valid form of research all around the world. And EVP was the first form of ITC. From EVP onward, we wound up with phone calls from the dead, where people would actually call from the other side and have full communications. There were fax machine images that were left. There were people who would go to sleep at night, leaving their word processor open, and communication would occur. They'd wake up in the morning, there'd be full messages on their word processor. And there's also video looping ITC, which basically you point a camera at an image with static and loop it back into the camera, and the way it just keeps looping straight through. Sometimes images of the dead would appear. It's actually quite fascinating. In today's modern studies, we still use EVP. We record them on handheld recorders like this, or bigger recorders like this that give you multiple channels and the ability to plug in other microphones. What our group mainly practices outside of EVP is something called automated sweeping frequency radio, known to the common public as ghost box communication. It's basically using a modified radio to be able to talk to the other side in real time and get messages. It's quite fascinating. It was invented in 2002 by a man named Frank Sumption. These are two of Frank's boxes right here. There are other types of boxes out there at the moment. There is the Andes boxes, there's the Paranormal Systems mini boxes, there's the SB line by Pro Measure. There's a lot of good stuff out there at the moment. There's a lot of little shack hacks too that you can use. And we use these on investigations to talk to the other side. We also use technology from time to time, as technology has really come to the forefront in the last year. Applications like EchoVox can be used on a phone or a tablet, or even with your PC, we can use something called Flux Ghostbox 1 that was just released in September of 2014. It's cutting edge. So if you have any questions on ITC, feel free to ask your presenters, or come to one of our public events where you'll actually get to see these things in practice. Thank you.
And here's actually a video of Tim in action at one of the investigations.
Who's going for Tim? You did? Hi, what's your name? Hi.
Okay, and actually we're going to stop right there. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Kaz for a second. Kaz, if you want to bring your box and come over by me, since I've got the microphone on, and tell them a little bit. Kaz is one of our other individuals that works with Tim W. in regards to ITC, and so we're going to let him talk a little bit about it.
What I have here is another version of Frank's box, similar to the two that you saw on the screen there with Tim. And again, as Tim described in there, what this does is it's a forward sweeping radio, more or less, that's been modified so that we can control the speed that it sweeps through the radio frequencies. So imagine you standing in front of a radio dial and just constantly scrolling the dial nonstop through the frequencies, generating a white noise, static sound from the constant dialing. What the theory is that static sound gives a avenue for spirits to speak back to us on to this side of the veil. Frank Sumption, again, the creator of that, was a very open, very open with his designs on this. So a lot of people took his designs and created other boxes, the Andes boxes and whatnot. So often we'll, as you saw in the video there, we'll turn these on and talk to spirits and try to see what we get back. So.
And we're really lucky, like I said, to have 2 individuals on our team. Frank Sumption actually just passed away in September. And so it was a huge loss for the paranormal community. And so there are going to be no more Frank's boxes created. And how many are there in the that were
There's 180 total that Frank had made by hand. So again, these are really prized possessions in the paranormal community. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're really lucky, like I said, to have 2 individuals that are working with this type of communication and to actually have actual Frank's boxes. There are other variations out there, but these are from the original creator, so that's pretty cool. Do you want to turn it on just for a second?
And we can go AM or FM. So you see, we're not picking up radio stations. We're not getting 89X in.
Well, how do you know if somebody's talking to it without it?
You'll hear words that, and sometimes it's not until we later go back and we review our voice recorders or our video that we're able to actually pick up what some of the words are saying. But that's what's really impressive, because if you're actually having a voice come through long enough to say a word, or we've even in some cases have actually gotten phrases, that lets you know that there's something they're communicating with you.
We actually, right. We actually were using this past weekend on an investigation in Oxford, and I asked, can you tell me what city we're in? And it actually, you had all of the, and then it said Oxford, Michigan.
Wow.
So it was really cool that it just came through that clear.
Yeah, so pretty neat. And you know, like I said, we try to use as many different avenues of communication as we possibly can to try to increase the communication that we're able to make with the other side. And we're lucky to have these guys doing the ITC for our team. So thanks, guys. All right, so we're to the fun part. We're going to take a look at some evidence. So we're going to start with visual evidence, and then we'll save the EVPs for the end. But it's funny that Lawrence was talking about up in Holly, because Battle Alley Antiques and Arcade is located in Holly, Michigan. And we have been very lucky to actually get to investigate there more times than we can count. Yeah, and we've made a good relationship with the proprietor of the shop, and they've allowed us to come in, and we feel really lucky because, you know, antique stores are filled with lots of old stuff. And, you know, I always talk when I'm doing this presentation and talking to kids about this, you know, we talk about, well, an antique store has old stuff, and obviously if that stuff is still around, that means that somebody really cared for it during the time that they had it. And so it's possible for energies to still be attached to items. But so this is an interesting picture that was captured at one of our investigations at Battle Alley. This was captured in December of 2009 at an investigation, and I actually think, Terry, this is your photo. But so what was one of the big claims of Battle Alley, and people will come up to Pat all the time, and the individuals that work there and the customers will make comments about the cat. Do you have a cat? They don't have a cat. They will hear the cat. They will see the cat. They will feel the cat brush up against their leg. There is no cat. But so our investigators were investigating this night, and one of them had thought that they had saw the cat move in the hallway. And so Terry took out her camera. She snapped this photo. And if I could draw your attention to a specific area of the photo. And I'm going to preface all of the evidence that we share with you tonight. Number one is on our website, so you're welcome to go on there and take a closer look, MotorCityGhostHunters.com.
Shameless plug.
And everything that we show you, you be the judge. If you don't think it's paranormal, that's fine. I'm going to zoom in on it in just a second. And so, you kind of be the judge today. You take a listen, you take a look, you let us know after the presentation what you think. So here is zoomed in on that area. This is something called the ghost flare. Okay. And we immediately, after seeing this picture, tried to figure out what could have caused this. And the first thing that popped into our head was an exit sign. Right? If an exit sign was photographed and there was any movement, perhaps it would make kind of this smeary light effect. And so the next week, the team went back into the location because luckily we have a good relationship with Pat and her crew. And we were able to take a look right in the area where it was photographed. There is no light source in that area. So with no light source, we have this random light that showed up, this anomaly that showed up in the photograph. And for those of us that have really good imaginations, if you want to kind of take a walk with me for a second, if you take a look at it, and we've got ears, potentially, and a body. What does it kind of look like? It could be the shape of a cat. So you be the judge, like with everything else, you be the judge. But interesting because we have a light anomaly, we have no light source in that location to create that anomaly. We double checked it, we could not recreate that picture. This is another one from Battle Alley. I like to lead with, I think these two are really interesting pieces of photographic evidence. So this is, real quick, this is an investigator. That is a human being. Okay? Everybody, we can all see that. That's a human being. That's one of our investigators. She was taking a picture of the display case. And upon further review, noticed kind of an interesting anomaly in this area. Well, let's zoom in. Okay? Let me just kind of give you an idea. Okay, now I'm going to make it go away. So do you see even, you can kind of see the outline of a collar, a high collar thing, which would be indicative of older times in an antique store. And immediately, actually, went back in. John's wife, he's addicted to buying paranormal equipment. John's wife, Sue, loves antiques. So she really likes when we investigate Battle Alley because she gets lots of new stuff at the house, new old stuff. But so immediately went back in, looked to see if there was a bust or something that would create this reflection, a mannequin, something that would create this reflection. And they went in the next day to take a look at this area. There is not anything that they could come up with, and it's just rather interesting, like I said, if you think about like the collar. I potentially even see kind of one of those old mustaches. Yeah. Do you see that? And so just interesting that we have kind of an energy reflection in the glass. All right. A little bit of video. This is, as I mentioned before, this is one of those times where we set up the flashlights and we use them to do a question and answer session. And we only consider this to be evidence if it's responding on cue. And so you're going to see that we're asking questions, and you're going to hear us say things like, light up the flashlight on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. And if it lights up at that point, that's active communication. If it's just lighting willy-nilly, that's just a flashlight lighting willy-nilly. We actually even had an investigation a couple years ago in Brownstown where we had a red flashlight set up and a black flashlight. Terry, you remember that? And we were able to direct the questions to the specific color flashlight and get response on the specific color flashlight. So those are moments when it's immediate, when it's in direct response, that we're going to consider this potentially to be evidence. And we'll take a quick look at some of those interactions.
And listen to whatever you have to say. So
we also have K2 meters and voice recorder set up. Do you understand us? If you understand us, can you turn off the flashlight, please, on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. It's doing its own turn. Got some, you hear music. There was a really wild Halloween party happening upstairs. But see, the K2 meters were also lighting up.
Are you trying to scare James?
It's working.
Oh, wow.
It's working.
This was one of the producers for Dave and Chuck the Freak. They sent him in with the purpose of they wanted something to scare him. And we had some pretty good activity that night.
They've already got James scared here. So turn on the flashlight again.
And did it just go brighter for a second before you turned it on?
Yeah.
So those are examples of when we're getting immediate communication or reaction. Like I said, if it's just going crazy, it's just going crazy. This is going to be a time where then we're also going to pay attention to the fact that our K2 meters were lighting up. We're going to pay attention to our voice recorders at that time and see if we can get things to collaborate with other things. This next one was recorded in March of 2013, and this was in Dearborn at the Ross McFadden House. And this was one of the original Arsenal buildings for Dearbornville, and we'll take a look at some shadow movement. You're going to see it original, you're going to see it slowed down, you're going to see it sped up. That way you can see it in different forms to see what you might be able to see. Look down by the couch area. And this might be, yeah. I think you'll see it better once we, yeah, so you want to be looking in that area. And this is one, I actually have one right here. You can see some movement kind of sweep across the couch. And because we have some light up in the room, it's making it a little bit more difficult to see. Did you see kind of, see it move across the couch real quick right there? So a little bit of shadow movement. You know, video evidence is really tricky to catch. It takes a lot of energy to show up visually. And so that was just one of the shadows that we were able to capture. This next video is really cool. This was the video I'm talking about from the 99th anniversary of the Villisca Axe murders. Cold case, to this day, has not been solved. Family of 8, correct? Well,
Yes.
8 individuals were killed. And they were never able to figure out who did the murders. They had a family, and then they had 2 visiting children that were staying in the house. And our team happened to be down there on the 99th anniversary, and John's got some really cool equipment, and it's actually the same, some of the same equipment that's used by the Michigan State Police. And so we'll watch the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. That's not it. I forgot to fast forward, sorry.
We first started on the first floor in the child's room where the 2 visiting children were.
Yeah.
So John, go again where you saw some splatter.
They were able to show them blood splatter
And
showing up.
we circled the entire room looking for any evidence. We immediately found evidence on the top part of the wall, on the outside wall, with blood splatter. We, at that point in time, went upstairs with John. He is the assistant for Darwin. We went into the parents' room. We looked at the outside wall. Once again, we found the same pattern. We would have the splatter marks.
If you do a DNA on this, you probably find out
His hair follicle.
his hair follicles.
Yeah.
And go ahead and go slowly, John, back over.
Okay, coming right back on over. You can see a little bit of splatter there.
Splatter is just everywhere.
Yeah. This is the first time that blood has been seen in 99 years.
Yes, it is. It's the first time, as John, the gentleman, which is the assistant to Darwin, he had mentioned to us that he's never seen this before.
Yeah, it's
Look at that.
That's,
Right up where Sarah's head would be.
yeah. Wow, look at that, John.
Oh. Okay. He's laying in bed.
So that's video of with the light system, the blood splatter showing up.
Your axe mark?
Yeah.
Look where all the extra is.
Yeah. And then we went into the children's room on the second floor.
There's a lot of speculation that one of them might have been hiding in the closet.
We checked the closet. There was reports that the closet itself might have had one of the children in there. It had been killed.
I'll let you see for yourself, John. You're the one that's going to be giving tours.
Yeah, nothing.
I see nothing like what we've had in the rest of the house.
So
They were also able, and I'm going to turn it over to John here in a second so he can explain the piece of equipment that was used, but they were also able to, there was a lot of talk that there might have been enough blood that it actually had seeped through the register down to one of the lower floors, and they were able to show that there was no evidence of any blood in the register. They were also able to identify that the beds had been positioned in the wrong location based off of where the blood splatter was. And so, John, you want to tell them a little bit about the piece of equipment that you guys used in order to capture that?
We actually own 3 high-intensity UV light systems, which are very similar to the ones the Michigan State Police use. Old technology, they used to use luminol. The lights that we use today are so high intense that they see the blood, they see the bodily fluids actually show up with the proteins. They'll actually show right through the paint. 99 years. And actually, one of our investigators, Tim Woolworth, just went down to Gettysburg to a bed and breakfast, which was a field hospital from the American Civil War. There was some rumors that there was operations that were going on in a certain room. Tim and some folks had removed some carpeting back and showed the owner actually blood splatter from the Civil War that was still in the room. We've actually used this piece of equipment on a few locations. The specific one that we used that Kathy's talking about at Velisca, when I showed it to Johnny Hauser, he is the actual proprietor of the home. Johnny's never seen it. He never seen it with any of the major TV shows that went through. Shortly after we showed it to him, there was another team that came in from Nebraska. They used luminol. They sprayed it over the walls. And luminol, what it does is it eats proteins. Okay? That evidence is gone forever.
So they were able to see it momentarily, and then the luminol then destroyed it.
The house is rented to paranormal teams.
Oh. Yeah.
That's how they basically take care of the houses, by renting it out to teams to come through and investigate.
Yeah. So our team was down there on the 99th anniversary for 2 nights.
Yeah, for 2 nights. The first night we were there, they had the worst storm I have seen in 51 years on this planet. Okay, that house literally came alive, and it was a very cool investigation. Probably one that I'll remember, and I've been doing this ever since I was a kid. I'll remember that probably the rest of my life.
So just some pretty neat evidence that they were able to reveal. This is by far my most favorite piece of video evidence. I think it's really compelling. We were very lucky. For several years we went up to, has anybody been up to Whitefish Point where the Shipwreck Museum is? We would go up there and we would stay right at the Coast Guard quarters, right at the museum, and we would get to investigate the lighthouse and the keeper's house and the Shipwreck Museum and the theater, all those buildings right there after hours, just our team. And we kind of made close friends with the people that are up there, and we're all Facebook friends now. And so this is a piece of evidence that was captured in September of 2011. It actually played on Fox 2 for a while, but we'll go ahead and I'm going to show it to you, and then I'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll take a look at it again.
Do you do ships?
We've done the light ship in Port Huron. Did you see that light anomaly?
I definitely thought I just saw a shadow go by. No, on the camera. John at about 59:30 or 59 on the dot. think I saw a shadow on the left-hand side. Right down here. It needs a new tape.
You're going to see it now in slow motion. Take a look. You see it, something move into the center of the room. It's already done that. And then you will see it move back out. Did you see that? Okay, so a couple of things. So that was Jason's voice that you heard on the video camera, himself and one of our former investigators, Chris. And they were approaching the video camera because, as you heard, it was at 59 something. And those of you that have a video camera that still run on tape, you know that typically a 60-minute tape actually technically runs for 63 minutes. And so we were really lucky that we even captured this. But they were approaching the video camera, and Jason saw what looked like to his eye when he was watching the video camera, a black shadow move in and move back out. And then you see him point that out. And then you see it like the flashlight even come into the screen. Okay, this is in the keeper's quarters up at Whitefish Point. This was one of the rooms that is set up to mimic the granddaughter Bertha's room. Okay, and you know how when you go into historic locations and like the museum rooms, they've got the chains across the front? If you watch, you can actually see where the chain is hanging, and you see this white shadow is behind that chain. If it was a flashlight, it would illuminate the chain, but it doesn't. The chain blacks it out. And so here's really quickly a picture of the room. So you can kind of see the chain hanging. Okay, and so watch as we'll take a look at it again. It moves into the room and then it moves out. And you can almost see, when it's in slow motion, almost see like leg movement, and you'll see the chain hanging. Just interestingly enough, because the kids always like to point out that it looks like a girl in a nightgown. It's just kind of interesting what's hanging on the wall. And I can tell you that Ghost Lab, when that show was on, they went up and did an investigation at Whitefish. This was an area that they too had experience. The investigator was leaning against that. So see how there's like this wall right here? You know, that kind of runs this way. He was leaning against the wall, and he had something tug, I think, on his shirt sleeve or something like that. And so when Ghost Lab went up there, they had actually contacted John and talked to him about the experiences that we had. And this was, I think, before we even found the Ghost Girl video. This happened after that. And so this was a pretty active room. The year before, we were up there investigating, and it was a couple of us females in the room, myself, Terry, and one of our other investigators at the time, Chaz, and they had locked us into the building. Those of you that have been up to Whitefish Point know that it is desolate. Right? There's not much around. But so one of the maintenance workers there, Rob, had locked us into the building just kind of to keep us safe. And we were in this room, and there was so much activity occurring throughout the house that we actually thought somebody had entered the house. Like, we didn't think it was paranormal related. We actually physically thought somebody had come into the building and was moving around downstairs because we were hearing so many thumps. And it was when we were in this room again. And then I can also tell you that Beth, who works up at Whitefish Point, refuses to clean this room go into this room by herself because the dolls apparently creep her out. But so let's take one more look at the Ghost Girl video. And look for that chain.
It's like beeping.
So the light just moved in, and now it moved back out, and you're going to see it here again in slow motion.
I definitely thought I just saw a shadow go by.
You can try to pause it if you want.
No, on the camera. John at about 59:30, or 59 on the dot. I think I saw a shadow on the left-hand side. Right down here. It needs a new tape.
And so now you see it move into the room. It's almost like it recognized that they were there, and now starts to move out of the room. Oh. That was you. Use that pause button. So did you see the chain kind of hanging right there? So interesting piece of evidence. It's on our website if you want to take a closer look. All right, to the audio evidence, and that's really kind of a majority of the evidence that we capture as paranormal investigators. Huh? Why don't you wait a second, see if we need it. So when we refer to an EVP, what we're talking about is electronic voice phenomenon. And an EVP really is any unexplained noise or voice that we capture on a voice recorder. Okay? That is different than if we're in a room and we hear a whisper. That's different than an EVP. Okay? If we're in a room and we hear something, that's a DVP. That's a disembodied voice or direct voice phenomenon. And so the best way I can describe this is we're all familiar with dog whistles, right? You blow a dog whistle and a dog will react. They hear at a different frequency than is audible to human ears. So the kind of belief in the paranormal related to EVPs and why EVPs are able to be captured on voice recorders and not necessarily heard when you're in the room is that sometimes they communicate at a frequency that is not audible to our human ears, but when we're running our voice recorders, that it converts it to a frequency when you're playing it back that we can hear. And so that's why we might not hear something when we're there, but we hear it when we're reviewing our voice recorders. And so a lot of the time, we really do just sit in dark rooms and ask questions and seem like we're talking to ourselves, because it's after the fact. It's not like it seems on TV. It's not 42 minutes of high action, everything gets wrapped up in 42 minutes, with the commercial breaks and everything like that. It takes a lot of time after the fact. The investigating is just a small portion of the time that we put in. Really what comes later is, and the majority of it is all of that evidence review. And so if you're in a location for 5 hours and you're like this guy and you've got 14 voice recorders running, 14 times 5, I'm an English teacher, my sister's the math teacher, but you can figure that out. I mean, even 10 voice recorders, 5 hours, 50 hours of evidence review. And sometimes you have to listen to it more than once to make sure that you're not missing anything. So investigating is a small portion of what we do. A majority of our time is actually spent doing our evidence review. But so here are some EVPs that we kind of highlighted and thought were interesting from different investigations. And we might have to replay them. We're going to kind of see how they do. And then if we need to adjust the sound system, we'll adjust the sound system. This first EVP I like to include because this was in a time before we had researchers as part of our team. And I think it highlights the importance, and next two EVPs after it, really about how our researchers really add to our team. This was an EVP that was captured at a home in Waterford back in April of 2010. And I'm going to go ahead. I want you to listen for kind of a little boy voice. And we'll see if we can hear it. Did you hear that little whisper right there? Do you want to maybe go ahead and maybe turn it up a little bit? Jason's going to turn it up a little bit, and we'll play it again, or it'll play itself again. But when we play it again, I want you to listen for, like I said, the little boy voice. And what it sounds like, especially when you listen to it with headphones, is it sounds like I'm scared of the Kellys. And this was an EVP that we're like, okay, we captured it. We sat down to do the reveal with the client. We're like, hey, we captured this EVP. This is what we think it sounds like, but we're not really sure of any significance. And that is then when they told us that Mr. and Mrs. Kelly were the original homeowners of the home. They had bought the land. They had built the home. They lived in the home up until the time of their death. Mr. Kelly passed away before Mrs. Kelly. And Mrs. Kelly was like the neighborhood grumpy lady, like the house that the kids would stay away from. And there was also talk that a child had died on the premises because they had a pond in their backyard. And so something that didn't seem significant to us, I'm scared of the Kellys, now took on a whole different meaning because of this information that luckily the homeowner was able to share with us, because at that time we didn't have researchers to share with us that information. So we'll go ahead and play that one again. That's our investigator. Did you hear it, kind of that whisper? It's hard because sometimes, talking is going on in the room at the same time. But so if you want to listen to that one, it's on the website. It's that little whisper. One's kind of hard. We'll move on to the rest of them are much better. So take a listen to that one on the website. This one was captured at a home in Roseville in June of 2014, and this is a perfect example of research coming into action because our researchers had pulled, I believe, the census records, and so you're going to actually hear, and Brenda, I think it's you talking, right? Where Brenda...
I went upstairs, I think it was expanding and contracting. Okay. With the heat. Okay.
What's your name, Frank?
Did you hear the whisper right there? You want to play it one more time?
You got wood upstairs, I think it was expanding and contracting. Okay. With the heat. Okay.
What's your name, Frank?
Hear that whisper? Frank Beal. So if you noticed, Brenda had addressed the entity that they were talking to and had asked, is your name Frank? Because when she had done and pulled the census records, the name Frank Beal came up on the census records. Mr. Beal had owned that area, was building up houses in preparation to kind of sell them, and so the family lived in that location. And so here's a perfect example. Because of the census records, she was able to address it to Frank, and not only did she get a response from Frank, but she actually got Frank saying his first and last name. And we know how significant it is because of the census records and knowing that that is a former homeowner. And the next one is very similar to that. This was recorded in Wyandotte in May of 2014, and this is one of our other researchers, Heather, talking, and you're going to hear her also talk about the census records, and I'll just go ahead and let you take a listen.
Is your name Ella or Ellie? I mean, I quickly looked at that census. I'm trying to think of it. All the girls' names started with E. Does your name start with an E?
Did you hear that whisper?
E. Does your name start with an E?
Did you hear the whisper? If you listen to it...
Does your name start with an E?
If you listen to it with headphones especially, you can tell that what it sounds like it says is I'm E. And so here she's rattling off all of these E names because she knew that all of the girls, all of their first names started with E, and that's because of the census records that she had pulled about the location. So just some really good examples of how our researchers are such a valuable tool that we have on our team. Okay, this next one, we're taking a trip back to Battle Alley. This was recorded in December of 2009. We were having a ton of interaction with what appeared to be a little girl that night. And you're going to hear one of our investigators say something about, let's turn off the lights and start asking questions. And apparently the little girl was impatient because she provides us with our first question. Okay, it's distorted, so we're going to skip that one. Okay, we're going to skip over Canterbury too because I'm going to guess that it's distorted as well. But those are two that are really interesting if you listen to them on the website. Canterbury Village, obviously you know, just down the road. To give you the little bit of story so you're enticed to go listen to it, one of our investigators was out walking during the investigation, and this was recorded also, I think, in 2009. Yeah, September of 2009. And we were having a lot of activity with another girl spirit that day. And his voice recorder was in his pocket turned off. And his voice recorder turns on. It records for 9 seconds. In that time, it catches, and mind you, this is the middle of the night. Have you been to Canterbury? You know the carousel? At that time, the carousel hadn't worked in quite a while. It catches carousel music as well as a little girl's voice saying, I am 9. Do you want to maybe just try it? Let's just see. Do you hear it? Hear the music first and then the voice. You want to do it one more time because that one obviously there wasn't a problem with it. So middle of the night, obviously, even if the carousel was working at that time, It's not going to be up running in the middle of the night. So that was just kind of an interesting one. And I Am 9, I don't know if it relates to the girl's age. His voice recorder recorded for 9 seconds while it was in his pocket, turned itself on, recorded, 9 seconds, turned itself back off. That was what was captured in those 9 seconds. This one kind of takes your breath away a little bit, or at least it does mine, because we actually have a personal connection on the team with this one. This EVP was recorded in Canton at John's home in 2009, in July of 2009. And John bought his house from one of our previous members, Patty. It was her family home growing up. And they had a family tragedy that occurred at the home, and so we know all of this information because Patty was actually confirming this for us. But so at the time when this is recorded, they are having a conversation about Patty's nephew, Brian, who was 2 years old, had passed away behind the home. And they have a factory behind their house with the truck wells, so you can like back up. It had rained and the truck well was full of water. And Brian, while his grandfather was watching him,
gotten out of the house. Grandpa wasn't keeping a very good eye on him, unfortunately. And little boys, being adventurous, he had wandered back to the factory and he had gotten into the truck well. Well, he had drowned. And as terrible as it is, we were asking a question: who was watching the child? Who was responsible?
So
I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent. Most of my team have kids. You know, we love kids. Okay? Child cases for us, that's our first priority. So we were asking a question, and this is our response that we got.
So that was actually an example of a DVP because Chaz actually hears a whisper in the room. But did you hear? The first 2 words are much louder than the second 2 words, but it sounds like it was my fault.
We have full body apparitions of that gentleman. He's on a regular basis.
So pretty, a really sad thing, and this was something that, Patty said that her dad had carried this guilt with him through the rest of his life, and obviously has continued to carry it on even in his passing. But that was an EVP that was recorded in Canton, at the Canton home. You want to jump to that one? Okay. This one's probably the funniest EVP we've ever recorded. This was recorded in 2011 in September when we were up at Whitefish Point. We were in the boathouse, and it's really funny because it was only females that were in the boathouse, and you're going to hear, it was really late into like the investigative cycle, and I won't tell you that Terry actually fell asleep when we were in the boathouse because we were sitting on the floor. We had done our question and answer session, and then we were just kind of hanging out, waiting for John to come over the radio and let us know that we were going to change locations. And so you'll hear a little bit of chit chat between myself and Kelly. But for the most part, we were just kind of sitting there quietly, and once again, 3 females, and this male voice is recorded. So it sounds like that, and you can tell it's a male voice, all females in the room, clearly a male voice, and it sounds like it says, "Ghost hunters, what are your careers?" So apparently they got tired of us asking all the questions, and they wanted to know. By far the weirdest EVP we've ever gotten. You want to play it one more time just because it's so funny? I mean, we all have them. We're all volunteers, so it was just. But it was kind of funny that that was recorded. Yes, sir.
And this is ghost hunters voice recorded.
Okay, maybe, yeah, it could sound like that too. You'll have to listen to it with your headphones on and let us know what you think. Okay. This is one that was recorded in Battle Alley Antiques again, and you'll see one of our investigators leave the room, and obviously it's an antique, it's a store, and those of you that are parents, what happens when you take kids into a store? They want money, right? They want to buy everything. So here's one that was recorded. Did you hear the kid's voice? And we put the words up on the screen. We'll play it one more time. Buy it, Mama. Buy it for me. We've all been in that boat, right?
We have several of these like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I need dollars recorded there. So lots of activity from that location.
And what time of day did this happen?
This happened, it was again in,
Midnight.
Yeah, midnight or later.
Typically between 10:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning,
Just keep
we're
that in mind when you
investigating.
hear it, since it's like there are no kids
Yep.
in that area. There are no kids with us.
At night?
Mainly because the rest of the world gets quiet at that time. There's not as much contamination from, people being out on the street and walking by locations, or, people tend to be asleep late at night, and so things tend to quiet down, and so we're able to be able to record things better and not have extra external noise that's contaminating our evidence.
But we have done investigations during the day as well.
I've seen them.
Normally it's at night.
Yeah, you just run into the risk of if a location's really busy, like so for example, Battle Alley, that you've got people walking in downtown Holly, they're out on the sidewalk, they're talking, and so if you catch a voice, do you know if it came through the window or was it recorded in the room? So it's just, we run the risk of things being contaminated at that time.
We have a philosophy, when in doubt, we throw it out.
Yeah.
If we think there's contamination, out.
Yeah. Okay, couple of more, and then we're going to hang out until you kick us out. So, you're welcome after we finish up. We'll take questions. You can come up and take a look at some equipment. You're welcome to kind of touch base with people and hear things from them. So, River Raisin, familiar with River Raisin? That was one of the War of 1812, the battlefield, yeah, and it was one of the most violent battles in the war.
One of the only battlefields in Michigan besides Mackinac Island.
And I think I read somewhere, I think it was the research that you did, that 934 individuals fought in that battle, and only 33 escaped death or capture. So if you've ever heard the battle cry, remember the raisin, right? That's related to River Raisin. And so this is an investigation that we did there in August of 2013, and just take a listen to see what you hear.
Yeah. No, it's other side of this.
What's it sound like? A cannon! They weren't shooting cannons off that day, I promise. You want to play it one more time?
No, it's other side of this.
So just kind of an interesting one. No, we have time, we're okay. EVP 11 and EVP 12 actually relate to each other. These were recorded on one of our most recent investigations at Canterbury Village, and it was in March of 2013. And you're going to hear them talking, and Tim W. makes a comment. They're talking to the shopkeepers about the telephone and somebody trying to dial out, and you're going to hear Tim W. make a comment about somebody trying to reach the party line. And so we'll play it normally, and then we're going to actually play it to you in reverse too, because it's kind of interesting that way.
Are you trying to call somebody on the party line?
Did you hear that voice right there? Did you guys hear that voice right there? We'll play it one more time.
Who are you trying to call on the phone?
So it sounds like what it says is must have been Thorpe. So we were doing this presentation, we were presenting the Canterbury evidence actually last year at the Lake Orion Library. And one of the shopkeepers, Terry, was there. And so we played the EVP, we talked about how it sounds like must have been Thorpe, and that was basically all we said about it, except for what we played to you again in reverse. And Terry came up to Tim after the presentation and was like, Tim, I have to tell you, we have this older lady. You know how, you've been to Canterbury, right? It's right down the road. You know the really brightly colored shops in the back, like in the row? Individuals that used to work on Wildwood Farm lived in those houses. And one of the ladies that would come into Terry's shop, Terry was one of the shopkeepers, she used to live in that row of houses. Her father worked on the farm. Their last name, their family name, is Thorpe. So just kind of an interesting thing that at the time we had no idea about. It wasn't until much later when we were doing the presentation at the Lake Orion Library that one of the shopkeepers kind of informed us of the significance of, potentially the significance of that quote. So I don't know if Thorpe was a trickster, he liked to play games or whatever, but must have been Thorpe. Now, the thing that's interesting, so sometimes we'll listen to communication in reverse too, because we feel like something might be there, but we're not necessarily getting it forward. And so sometimes we've captured things when listening to it in reverse. And so here is that must have been Thorpe in reverse.
Are you trying to call somebody on the party line?
Did you hear that little voice right there? We're going to play it for you again in a second, but it actually sounds like, real quick, let me back up. What were they talking about? The party line, the telephone, right? Being able to dial out. Well, we're going to listen to it in reverse again. It kind of sounds like, hello, you may reach us at.
Are you trying to call somebody on the party line? Who are you trying to call on the phone?
Isn't that weird? Were you guys able to hear it? And this one too is on the website, so feel free to take a listen. Okay, that brings us to our last EVP. This one's my all-time favorite. Especially as a mom, it kind of gives me chills. So this was recorded actually the same year that we caught Ghost Girl on video and Ghost Hunters, What Are Your Careers, and a whole bunch of other EVPs. But we investigate way late into the night. And so this was about 2-ish. Some of the team members were taking a break at the house where we stayed, the Coast Guard crew quarters. Yeah, they're sitting in the kitchen.
I literally seen a plate come up out of the calendar and fall into the sink. And I started telling these guys about it, and then we got this.
And it's not uncommon for us just when we're sitting around hanging out to keep our voice recorders running, because sometimes that's when they're trying to communicate and take part, and we talk about we're a family, and so it's like the family getting together investigating, and so sometimes we'll leave things running. And so they were taking a break, they had their voice recorders running on the kitchen table. John witnessed this out, had seen this occur. They're trying to figure out what possibly could have caused this. Now I want to remind you, number one, Whitefish Point is very desolate, okay? There are no children running around Whitefish Point at 2 o'clock in the morning. Additionally, while several of us have kids, you have to be 18 or over in order to stay at the crew quarters, to rent out that house and stay there. You cannot be under 18 and stay there. So there are no children present. It's the middle of the night, and listen for the voice. Did you hear the voice? It's in 2 parts. Mother, find me. Middle of the night.
Before the existence of the lighthouse, shipwrecks have been washing ashore up on that beach. Families, women, children. Yeah.
So that's just to me a really compelling EVP, and every time I listen to it, it kind of gives me the goosebumps. Especially being a mom myself, and it's very clearly a child's voice, and it was recorded in the middle of the night. So I think that one's really compelling. And it too is on the website, motorcityghosthunters.com, and you can take a listen. That brings us to, just want to share with you a couple of things that we have coming up. Tomorrow, Miss Brenda, our lovely Miss Brenda, is doing a presentation at the Carleton Library. If you just didn't have, you have to see more, feel free to join them tomorrow. And then I mentioned that we team up with historical societies. This Saturday, we are hosting, on the Port Huron Historical Society's behalf, a adult ghost hunt for the public at the Fort Gratiot Lighthouse, and the building's right there. And you can go to their website and purchase tickets through Eventbrite. And 100% goes towards the Historical Society. We do not take anything. Everything goes towards them. They have been able to do, in the couple of years that we've teamed up with them, they've been able to do renovation. They're working on opening a hospital right there on the premises, an old-style hospital. And so that is an upcoming event. I think there are still some tickets available. And so if you're looking for something spooky to do on Saturday, feel free to join us there. Thursday, October 23rd, we'll be presenting over at the Romeo Library. Friday, October 24th, we will be with the Flat Rock Historical Society, doing an investigation with them on that Friday to benefit their society. And I believe we still have a couple of tickets available.
Sold out.
They're sold out already? Okay, you can call and beg and see if they'll. And Thursday, October 30th, we'll be down the road at the Auburn Hills Library. That's actually on a historic complex. All of the buildings right there were part of the Seaborn Estate, or actually the library itself was an old historic home from down the road that they picked up and moved there, and then they converted it into the library. So we've actually investigated at the Auburn Hills Library, as well as the Seaborn Mansion. They opened that up to us. Wesson Seaborn was a real estate developer in Detroit, and he was married to Winifred Dodge, whose father is John Dodge.
What's the road you're talking about?
Squirrel and Walton.
Or Squirrel and University.
Squirrel and University, yeah. And that whole, their whole Auburn Hills Civic Center complex is like that historic. They even have, they have the little graveyard for Wesson Seaborn's hunting dogs still on location there and everything. So it's a pretty cool place. And apparently I missed one. We will be in Dearborn on October 25th. And are there still tickets available for that? And that benefits the Dearborn Historical Society. And you can order those online as well. And of course, we're back in Port Huron on Saturday, November 1st. And so tickets are available for that as well. Great events. It's always fun. You get a chance to actually do what we do. And the team is there to kind of help you along. But really, it's your chance to be a paranormal investigator. And then obviously stay tuned for those of you that have kids, or for those of you that are under 18. We will be having another Kids Day over the summertime. And so stay tuned, like our Facebook page, visit our website, stay tuned for news regarding those events on there. And of course, one more time, MotorCityGhostHunters.com. I had to get it in there, of course. And we just want to thank you so much for coming. Happy Halloween. Thanks for being here. Thank you to the Clarkston Library for having us out. We're going to hang out. We're happy to take any questions. You're welcome to come up and take a look at some equipment, talk to other team members. Are there any just general questions that I could answer right now? Yeah, absolutely.
It gets cold when there's ghosts around sometimes.
Sometimes there's.
Yet you use heat sensors. Are ghosts hot or cold?
Well, they can be both. And the FLIR does a variation in temperatures. So if it's really cold, it will show up a different color than a really hot heat signature. So it shows cold and hot. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Why do you sit around in the dark? Are they afraid of the light, or?
Why do we sit around in the dark? Well, a lot of lights hum. So we're trying to take out any additional noise contamination that might occur. We're looking for shadow movement, things of that nature, and so we're just trying to eliminate any other external sources that could influence that. And obviously having lights on is also going to potentially kick up the amount of electromagnetic energy in an area as well. And I think somebody, no, yes?
Well, if someone is wanting to communicate, why would they just pick random phrases? I mean, it seems more like a recording of something old rather than someone trying to come now.
Well, we have, there's kind of two different theories of thought in regards to that. So we could have where there's just kind of energy on repeat in a location, that residual energy that just kind of repeats over and over again, and that could be what we're capturing. And then, yeah, like a movie, it just keeps playing because that was the pattern of their life, and that pattern has now continued in their death. Or sometimes we actually get intelligent communication. We've had investigators' names called out, captured on EVP and stuff like that, where it's actually intelligent communication in that location. So like the River Raisin, that's a perfect example of residual energy. That's energy that's trapped in that location.
You get a lot of Gettysburg too. You'll get the cannons. You'll hear marching. That's going to be residual because it's what happened every single day. It's going to happen every single day. It's what happened on a daily basis there. Whereas when we talk to our loved ones, we can get somebody that died in the house that's still there because they're attached to it. We can get our family members. I know Brenda's had her grandpa. I've had my partner who died in Afghanistan came through to John and me using the obelisk. They use a lot of different devices. We can get anyone when we use the Frank's box. Anybody can come through there.
And I think I saw another question over here as well. Yes, ma'am.
I just wondered, on the first picture you showed of the alley, on the shelf, was there a mirror on the top shelf? Do you remember?
I know that they went back and looked at the location, and if I do that, I'm going to make you all dizzy. Let's take a look at it after the presentation if you want to come up and we'll...
It looked like there was two faces in a mirror, but I don't
Two faces in a mirror? Okay.
mirror or not, you know, or if it was
Yeah.
It was a reflection of how tiny was in the actual glass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a glass
There was
present.
no mirror at the time. I got dragged out there, my wife bought some.
Seems it's only fair, right? He gets to buy equipment, she gets to buy antiques. Other questions?
It doesn't look like there's a mirror. It looks like you can see the
right
wood.
there. Right there, what is, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see what you're talking about.
Is that something, oh, from back here it looks like
That's actually a light.
faces.
I think that's a light reflecting from, yeah,
She has
right here.
sconces and all different.
Oh, yeah, it could be like. Because that's the Native
Back
American
here,
room,
it
isn't it?
just, it looks like a mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Native American room. They can have owls and stuff like that in there.
Good eye. Other questions? Okay, well, we're going to hang out. Feel free to come up and chat. Take a look at the equipment. Thank you so much again to the Clarkston Library. Thank you so much to Clarkston Public Access for being here. Happy Halloween. Happy haunting. Or hunting, or both, maybe. I don't know.